Hi. I mean, the two questions we usually get asked first is how did we end up together, which is you just asked. And as you were told, there was people in the arts community that suggested we work together. In particular, both making projects at a particular time that I was making a project called 100 Stories About My Grandmother, which was an interview project. I talked to 100 male sex workers and asked them to tell me stories about their grandmother. And I went to all the cities my grandmother had lived in. At the same time, Linda was making, do you want me to describe it or do you want to describe it?
Go ahead. Okay. I was doing this where were their mothers, and that's, some of you saw it. Is there a class that saw this work? Mm-hmm. Okay, do you want to put your hands up? Are these two classes or one?
I saw it on the web.
Yes, on the web. Okay. So about half of you know it. So that was basically where I paired professional musicians with people who I defined as taking alternate life paths, and together they wrote one song about the participant's mother. And so then this was the CD that was put out. And so people kept saying, oh, you should talk to Peter because mothers, grandmothers, and we were almost, in some ways, also positioning ourselves in a similar way because we were saying, like, say, for example, there were like a lot of gang guys in this, and there was a big issue in Saskatoon because everybody was very fearful of them. And partly what I was saying was, you know what, they have mothers, and sex workers have grandmothers. So there was a similar narrative emerging from the two works.
Yeah, so it was basically like members of the arts community, in particular in Toronto. I live in Toronto. Linda spent some of her time in Toronto, who suggested we get together, and we had a tea at a Starbucks, I'm pretty sure. And we started asking questions what we wanted to do next and if we could work together. I said that I was really interested in talking to a female population because I hadn't done that before, but I felt uncomfortable in demanding questions of them. I wanted them to tell me things. And I don't know who came up with this particular idea.
It just emerged, but I think at the same, I was working in the shelter where we did this piece. So about half of the mother's piece was done literally across the road from where I live in Toronto. And because this took hours and hours, I was there a lot. So I was really aware that they were always going to classes and having lessons in things like banking, but you can't have a bank account if you're homeless. So there was always this gap between what they were being taught and the skills, because I also realized that these women at the shelter had incredible strengths that were not named. And they had strengths just because they survived for 30 years on the street, and that there was a strong community. And that was the other thing that was really evident, that there were interconnections. So we decided that we would sort of address like their strengths, because that was probably what was missing in all these conversations.
I think we both are really excited or interested in realizing our communities and realizing who belongs to our community and addressing the fact that the majority of the population doesn't want to acknowledge some people belonging to our community, whereas we are really interested in having conversations with those people.
And I think we both have histories where it's not like the other as much as it's part of a community that we were probably more comfortable with and more familiar with, just from our own histories. And it made sense to do a project that brought that out to a broader community. What was the other question?
The other question is, how did we get together, and where did we meet these women? I think we answered both those questions.
Yeah, okay. So people have been asking us questions individually. I don't even see your, like Bridget had questions. So do you want to re-ask, because I think most people are wanting to know what you asked just now.
Oui, la première question qui m'est venue à l'esprit, c'est les personnes, les femmes qu'on voit dans ce vidéo-là, est-ce que ce sont toutes des femmes? Bon, premièrement, ça me questionnait parce que je trouvais ça intéressant de voir qu'ils parlaient des autres comme si c'était des femmes. Ils parlent toujours de ceux qui les entourent au féminin, jamais au masculin. Puis ils s'incluent là-dedans. Puis il me semble qu'il y en a que c'est quand même évident que c'est des garçons.
We have two answers probably.
The question is basically if they're all...
Yeah, they're all women.
Yeah.
I mean, they all define themselves as women. They came to Adelaide Women's Shelter as women. We didn't ask them what was between their legs. We didn't care what was between their legs. So we just asked them as the people they presented themselves. I mean, transgender issues is something that I've always been really interested in, and I've done projects around transgendered issues, and I just take whoever talks to me, whatever they present themselves as. If they say they're masculine, if they say they're feminine, if they say they're a man, they say they're a woman, I'm fine with that discussion.
And I think it's a matter of respect that however, any of you present to us, like it's not our right to challenge that. So it became really important that they were respected in the way that they came, and that it never came up. In fact, it was just like because it was a women's shelter. There was a whole structure. I think the other thing about that particular center is that it is very supportive to trans women who are transitioning because depending on the funding for shelters, some of them are not. So I was aware of that because of, and I knew it was because of funding issues. Other questions about that? Okay, so then there were other questions. Yeah.
Or anything else?
Just relating to that, the quote, there's a quote from a famous philosopher. Ce qui est ce qui est, ce qui n'est pas est ce qui n'est pas. It's a very old saying from Parmenides. I don't have any particular formation on sociology or things like that. It struck me as some sort of universal knowledge, but it's all on the appearance. For us, seers, what we see is, oh, there's a man talking, and then you see the subtitles because I didn't hear the sound, and always elle, moi au féminin, and so on and so on and so forth. So on the part of the viewer, it creates an effect, a very strong effect, this play on feminine.
Because I'm Anglophone, I don't really pay attention to the subtitles. I never really thought that, of course, if you don't understand English, you'd just be reading the subtitles, and the disconnect would be much more obvious. I mean, because she's talking about herself as a feminine when you're listening to her, so. I mean, that's really, that becomes a language issue.
Well, in translation, I actually wonder if there were any gaps.
I guess in English, I had heard the sound. The first time she had said she including her, did talking about her, the feminine creates an effect.
Yeah.
But were there any gaps in translation? Because, like, we're not.
All very good.
Yeah.
Okay, just interesting. So maybe the other thing we could just mention is in terms of the posters, we were interested in the fact that there's just this self-help thing where you can learn anything in 10 easy lessons. And so we were sort of looking at that it's just so prevalent, this thing of, so we were looking at posters, and they're black and white, they're like postering, but the text all came out of the videos, but we consciously chose clips that were sort of ordinary, that anybody could have said. So that was sort of our logic behind the text on the posters, like don't be rude.
I guess that's why that's what I find very interesting. And you put the stress on what is normative,
Yes.
always, or do not, or and this is very clever. It's very sober, but it's very clever.
Je voulais juste dire que la raison pour laquelle la question m'importait à savoir si c'était des hommes ou des femmes, c'est parce que, comme il est question de l'industrie du sexe, le sexe est tellement catégoriser un homme avec une femme ou un homme avec un homme, mais c'est comme important de savoir. Il me semble que quand on pense à prostitution, on se dit, en général, c'est deux personnes de sexe différents. En général. C'est pour ça que c'est presque important. C'était important pour moi de savoir, je m'adresse-tu à une femme ou à un homme? Parce qu'il est question de sexe là-dedans. Puis on se définit en tant qu'homme ou femme en rapport avec le sexe.
Doesn't it only matter to you if you're a client?
It would.
If I could purchase one of them, then we can have that conversation.
And in fact, it is an issue. I don't know if there, in some of the videos it did come up. Like one of the skills was how to handle it when somebody finds out that you have, still have a penis.
And how to hide your penis while having sex, or how to have non-penetrative sex but make your client think that they're penetrating you as well.
So, yes?
Why are you repeat the same pictures?
Why do we repeat the same pictures? I mean, it's trying to create this feeling of like a rally, or like you've just entered into a conversation that's already been happening. Like it's almost like I'm trying to remember the name of.
Yeah. But it's like sort of mass postering, and the fact that, it's like a way to convince people.
It's like it's a really poor. The person who talks and tries to get you all revved up and tell you how great things are.
So it's like convincing you, except that there is like it's a very generic content, which is in opposition to, in fact, the videos that are much more personal. So it was like a postering campaign, maybe the simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding the place here and the subject of your work. And I was wondering how you chose the place you expose this work.
Sometimes.
You want to expose this work, do you expose it only in fine arts gallery, or when it's a fine arts gallery, is it more a sound artist where will happen some discussion like this, or do you are also interested to expose it in other sort of center, more social or things like that? I was wondering what is the project regarding your artist statue and your also social statue.
Okay, I would say that I'm not really a sociologist anymore.
No.
Like I would never position myself, but I think we both have a history of that knowledge. But I think that's a really important question because, like, we're artists. So I don't know how you'd answer, but I'd say that the starting point is to function within the art system. But what has happened, like, so I don't know if the people who've seen the website, this ended up going to a lot of different non-art venues, but I don't know that anybody would know about it if it hadn't started in a gallery. Because as an artist, the gallery is the venue that, like, and it was artists, gallery people that knew about it that asked me to show it, like they'd heard about it, but that was the first step. From then, the agencies, participants, all people, there's a route outside of that, and some of the same thing is happening with this. Like it was in the summer picnic for the sex workers in Montreal last summer. So, and I guess I have a question about, is there a way to take it directly there? But I'm not sure. There's something about having the gallery structure that I still value. And because you get a catalog, you get the funding to do it. There's a practical part to it, and then the other thing seems secondary. I might change my mind on that.
I mean, I'm really interested in galleries as spaces where the whole community can come and see. I'm not necessarily interested in galleries being this sort of separate, austere space that you can come to. So I work through the gallery system, and really, anytime I have a show, I spend a lot of time trying to invite people that may never come to a gallery to come to the show, and to try to include the gallery in a space that everyone can feel comfortable in.
Okay.
So it's the gallery systems in Canada, I mean the artist-run center systems in Canada really allow for lots of conversations to happen which don't happen on your television, don't happen as much on the radio. But so this is a doorway for a lot of people to start having these conversations. Is it sure right here?
And I think you work with the galleries. Like we had a conversation early on about having community outreach. And so like, I think anytime we, have a show, we ask for some kind, that a way to engage the broader community. And sometimes it's difficult, and sometimes, like I've done sort of the same show in like a community center, and sometimes it's a totally different audience. Sometimes it's a mixed audience, and I'd say it's an ongoing process.